I say, what happens if you had to have 2-3 months off and you were sick? Who would run your business? How would your business run without you? That would literally be my one sentence or two sentences, however many that was, to say to them how important it is to be healthy.
Intuitive Leadership Mastery, the podcast for entrepreneurs and leaders like you who want to double profits and half stress by improving your business intuition. Learn how with your host, Michaela Light.
Welcome back to the show. I'm here with Ollie Matthews, and we're going to be talking about a big issue in business, which is burnout. So many entrepreneurs are go, go, go until they are like the Energizer Rabbit, and then they fall over and they don't have any energy and their health is shot to shit. Oops, am I allowed to say that word on this show? Yes, of course.
Your show.
It's my show. So we're going to look at how you can use your intuition to avoid burning out and some of the other related challenges involved in that. Very important. We'll talk about why it's important a bit later. We'll also touch on hormones and stress, energy, low energy, weight gain, thyroid problems, sleep problems. And we have a story about someone who crashed her business. It's a bit sad, really. Anyway, we'll talk about that later. If you don't know Ollie, he is in the United Kingdom. And he used to be, or still is, a kind of alternative doctor. I think you call it functional medicine, which I'd never heard that expression. We'll talk a bit about what that is in a moment. And he helps entrepreneurs who are on the brink of burnout, or maybe beyond the brink of burnout, in order to reach peak performance and grow their business even more than they could have done otherwise. So he's also the best-selling author of a book called The One Day Body Upgrade, which we'll put the link in the show notes at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. Welcome, Ollie.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Now, why is all this talk about health matter to entrepreneurs? Some entrepreneurs are going to be like, well, I've got a business to run. I can't deal with my health.
I say, what happens if you had to have 2-3 months off and you were sick? Who would run your business? How would your business run without you? That would literally be my one sentence or two sentences, however many that was, to say to them how important it is to be healthy. And not just that, how important it is to show up in a high level of performance in your business. Because there's showing up, and then there's showing up optimally so your business can thrive. Because so many people are just showing up day in, day out, getting things done when they could be actually being more productive and earning more money as a result.
So you might actually say your body is your business.
It is. As I've said, this tagline came around. I was doing an interview. We were in an entrepreneurs retreat. It was off the coast of Croatia. It was an absolutely amazing place. And then suddenly I was like, your body is your business. And it's stuck since then, because your body is your business. Without a sustainable body, you haven't got a sustainable or scalable business. It's just so true, because we're just not going to grow our business. You're not going to be the leader for your team and your employees. You're not going to be the leader and the person, the coach or mentor you need to be for clients potentially. And not just that, for family as well, and for friends, and for ourselves. And I think that's one of the most important things. If we can show up better for ourselves, then we have less ailments and less psychological things that go on with our health as well.
I think that's a good point. Sorry for any background noise going on here. So I want to say that also, not just the entrepreneur's body, but also our staff. I like to focus on my staff's health too, and help coach them. Okay, how's your health going? And I like to inspire my clients and audience as well on this. And I think it's sometimes a subconscious reason people are attracted to work with me, both as staff or clients. You know, when you have radiant health and you've got this great vibe, it just attracts other people to you. So, you know, there's a business benefit to this. But I think the most important thing is, you know, if you're not healthy, it's very hard to enjoy anything else in life when you lose your health. I don't know who is listening has ever lost their health for some period of time, either with COVID or broken something, or they got really sick. But I know for myself, both from my own sicknesses and seeing other people who get sick, you just can't enjoy life or your business. So what's the effing point of growing your business if you then can't enjoy it?
And not just the physically being sick. I had a client that came to me and his goal is to drop a bit of weight because he was feeling sluggish, he was feeling bloated, and he had all these gut health problems going on that he didn't show up as the 100% authentic person that he is when he goes on stage and does public speaking. So it's not just being able to be there for your business. What does events like public speaking, like podcast appearances, what do these actually bring to your business? And what more can they bring if you're actually really confident in yourself as well? That makes a lot of difference.
Do you feel health affects how your confidence is perceived?
100%. I think energy wise, like I'm very intuitive. Obviously you are as well. And energy wise, I can sense someone's energy and I can sense when they're feeling off. And it makes a lot of difference to me. Like I know I had my most successful year in business ever last year. And one of the reasons is because I 100% practice what I preach. And right now I feel the healthiest physically and mentally that I've ever felt. And I'm 36 years old and I've competed in bodybuilding. 2012 was my last show. And I actually feel healthier. It was not healthy to compete in bodybuilding.
Which bit of your body did you build?
A couple of bits.
Okay.
But competed in the bodybuilding show. 2008 to 2012. Yes, physically you might look shredded and everything like that, but it wasn't about health. It was about a certain look. And I truly feel that the reason I had the best year in business last year is because I was 100% aligned, showing up as myself. And there were ups and downs, don't get me wrong, but I still was open and honest about the downs, just as I was about the ups. And having that confidence when the public speaking events and things like that, you're not going to be all closed up, and your body language is different when you're actually when you're not feeling confident in yourself. You just turn up and show up as a different person, show up differently on lives and at team events, at recruitment times and everything like that, at sales calls. Makes a lot of difference.
I would agree with that. And for me, I like to, we'll get into where your principles are, but to me, the basics of sleep, nutrition, exercise, stress relief, probably you have a few more things in there, but if I don't pay attention to them, I don't feel as healthy, and eventually it affects my business. So I totally agree with that. Now, we mentioned burnout earlier. What exactly is burnout?
I just feel burnout is when your body is not performing where it actually should be performing, but to the point where it is seriously detrimental. And seeing signs of burnout is one thing, but when we actually burn out, we physically have to stop. And it takes longer. When we say prevention beats the cure, it takes longer to start then get going. We think about a train leaving the station where it slowly builds up. People have been doing that in business. They're building up and building up that speed. And then suddenly that stops and breaks. It then has to take time to then be fixed, to get back on the tracks, to then build up that speed again. And that's what we're doing in business if we just pushed aside the actual signs that we're burning out. And I think it's something where I would say it's the most common thing. I mean, I deal with burnout day in, day out with clients, and it's one of the areas I really, really specialize in. But the signs of burning out they're so common. It's worrying, especially in entrepreneurs, in high achieving entrepreneurs. How many times people will just ignore these with an attitude to say, it'll never happen to me. But then it does. And that's when we just literally get knocked for six. How many times we've seen people completely lose their businesses because of health.
You said you knew a woman who had a really successful business. Tell us a bit about her story.
Yeah, so this wasn't a client of mine.
Before?
She was doing really well. I connected with her speaking in Medellin, and really great little roundtable mastermind. And I was talking about the value of what I do for people's businesses. And she said, this is my story of burning out. If you want to know about value, you can basically charge what you want if you listen to this story. And she said that her business was doing really, really well, around $70,000 months, absolutely crushing it. Multiple staff, and she was seeing signs of burning out. These are signs like she's waking through the night, or not able to get to sleep, or she's waking up and her mind is racing in the morning and she's just feeling groggy as well. She has afternoon energy dips. She then had problems with hair falling out a little bit. She had times where she would have brain fog. Her memory just wouldn't be, she'd go into a room and just not be able to remember what she went in there for. Like however many times we've gone up the stairs and thought, why the hell did I just come in here? Those sorts of things. Problems with being able to drop weight or maybe not put weight on. These were all signs that people are burning out, and she was seeing these signs. Now, again, she had that attitude that this isn't going to happen to me. I'll just build my business with that deal with it later mentality. She burnt out, and her business went from $70,000 a month to $7,000 a month.
Wait a minute. She lost 90% of her income?
Yep. And not just that, she was trying to look for ways to pay her staff, because she was still very much in her business. It wasn't like she'd stepped out. She was looking for ways to pay her staff, and she was looking at her son's bank account to try and borrow the money. At the same time, her landlord said, I want to sell the house. Do you want to buy it? She didn't have the credit rating, so she then had to find somewhere to move to. Now, she's doing amazing now, really, really well, and she's built her business up to even higher levels. But it's just, when we hear stories of that, it shouldn't have been to the point where you burn out before we do something about it, especially when we see these signs. The most common sign being problems with staying asleep.
Wait, I don't want to reveal her personal details, and we haven't said her name or a business name. So I'm kind of curious, was she using caffeine to help her keep going, for example, or using other alcohol to help her calm down?
I don't know. I know she was definitely using caffeine. She did like some wine and stuff she mentioned about, and I don't know what other stimulants, I'll be fully open, I don't know what other stimulants she was using, but it's not very uncommon unfortunately, it's not uncommon for me to hear of people using nootropics for staying awake, getting loads of focus, and then using a nootropic to fall asleep. Using
there's that drug you can buy on the grey market.
Modafinil.
That's the word. Helps.
So many times I see people using it
and the next day.
And I'm someone that's got ADHD. I'm on the spectrum of autism, and I would never touch modafinil. If I need modafinil, my health is not in the position that I need it to be. But we should be able to focus to those levels to be able to get enough work done to thrive. Maybe if you've got a launch, and you want to get an extra 5%, but I see so many people using drugs and stimulants to focus when they're not doing those foundations. I look at health. I have this obsession with Everest. There's a chapter on Everest in my book, and I look at health like climbing Everest. And so many people are trying to climb the mountain without getting cold. But not just that. It's also that when people climb Mount Everest, they have to go to base camp and acclimatize. Now, it takes around 12 days to trek to base camp. Ironically, it takes 8 days to trek back down. So if you fall off health at base camp, then it's taken longer to get back there. But we have this foundational health level at base camp. Then when people climb the mountain, they do rotations. So they go up to camp 1, acclimatize, back down, and so on. Then they go up to camp 2 and then back down. Up to camp 3, back down, and then it can go to camp 4, the death zone, and then summit. But so many people try and skip this foundation. They haven't acclimatized and end up just going straight up to camp 1, camp 2, camp 3. But not just that, there's a kicker at the end where they have this goal. When someone climbs Mount Everest, what is their goal? I'm asking you with that. What is their goal when they climb Mount Everest?
Well, usually they want that Instagram photo op at the summit, Well,
before Instagram.
Oh, okay. Well, they want to get to the summit, Usually that's their goal.
Well, that's one of the problems. Most of the deaths on Everest happened on the way down. And we have our goals, but we don't have a goal for after the goal. So people may have this goal to drop 50 pounds, but what happens once they've dropped the 50 pounds? Well, we revert back to our old habits and like not have sustainable methods. Coming down the mountain is very, 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 very dangerous. So actually the goal is to get up, summit, come back down safely. And I think that's such a powerful thing to take over to our health, is that the same when we look at business and we have a launch, the goal is to have a successful launch, but to be able to have that product to be sustainable afterwards. You don't want it to just have this launch and then just fall completely off the cliff. And with our health, like so many times people are doing that, have this big. So one of the things, I don't know whether you've heard of it, is this protocol called 75 hard. Have you heard of that?
I have not. What's that?
So this is a guy called Andy Frisella. It's actually a mental fortitude challenge, but people look at it as a fitness or health challenge, where you do 2 workouts a day, one of them outside, and I believe they're 45 minutes each. And you read a certain amount of pages, like 10 pages a day. You drink a certain amount of water. You don't have alcohol. You follow a diet, do all these different things. But so many people will start doing that. And basically, if you fall off one day, you go back to day one. So when people have completed 75 hard, it's 75 very strict. But the amount of times I've seen people say, I'm going to do 75 hard, but they can't do 2 workouts a week at the moment. And I think this is where those foundational things of just getting some movement in, getting good nutrition, getting good routine, just help people so much. And I went off on a tangent there with Everest, but I think it's so powerful to think of. I don't use Everest in a term of actually it's hard. I use it in a term just thinking about that analogy, to climb the biggest mountain, to climb the biggest peak, the biggest goal, the highest mountain in our lives. We have to have a certain baseline, base camp level of health to get there.
Yeah, I read a book about climbing Everest called Into Thin Air. I forget who wrote it. I'll put it in the show notes. But
Bear Grylls? Bear Grylls?
No, it's some journalist dude who covers mountaineering. But the point was, like you said, they didn't die on the way up. They made it to the summit, and then a lot of people died on the way down. There was a blizzard, and they were just out of energy. And I think that's how that relates back to burnout. You know, they climbed and they had that motivation to keep on going. They got to the summit, they took the photos, but then coming down, they were knackered and they didn't have a good plan for getting down. And unfortunately, some of them died.
I think you could use the intuition there as well, because yes, we can look at weather reports and know what's going on, but you can see whether this is actually, like, we start losing our intuition. We get what they call that oxygen deprivation.
Yes,
like the mountain brain, and they can't be intuitive of where they're putting their feet, of what ropes they're clipping onto. And sometimes with entrepreneurs or with anyone like pushing for goals, that goal can literally blind us. People get snowblind up the mountain. Those goals can literally blind us to the point where that is everything that matters. Maybe it's they're trying to get to 7 figures. So their health doesn't matter as long as they get that sale, as long as they get that goal, as long as they push to that next level. And sometimes it just comes back to bite us in the butt.
Now, what about emotional issues and mental health? Would that be an early warning sign that you're burning out?
Yeah. Like,
if you're having anger management issues or getting a bit depressed, or
anger management, motivation things, like when we look at dopamine and addiction, serotonin, like addictive tendencies. I do a brain screening, with my clients, and it goes through neurotransmitters. So we'll look about motivational, get up and go neurotransmitters, your addiction neurotransmitters, your dopamine and serotonin, to see whether we need to support those pathways with certain supplements. Or
now, for those people listening who have no effing idea what dopamine is, well, they've heard the word, but they're not sure what it means. What is dopamine?
You're listening to the Intuitive Leadership Mastery Podcast. Get detailed show notes on today's episode together with your free What Would It Take Business Intuition Guide at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. And now, back to today's show.
dopamine is basically our get up, our contentment side of things. Serotonin being the get up and go. So dopamine, I describe it as if you've got a dopamine issue, your favorite band's playing, but going there is going to be good for you, but you just can't be bothered. Serotonin issues is when your favorite band's playing, but you just don't even want to go. So dopamine is like, we have this release of dopamine when studies have shown like food will help release dopamine, but it's not eating the food. It's just before eating the food, we get this dopamine release. So then our dopamine drops and we have this high, but then we have this dip afterwards as well. And things like caffeine can help with increasing the dopamine hit, but then we have more of a dip afterwards. Things like weight training, exercise, where people get addicted to exercise, can be dopamine is just gambling tendencies. We get the dopamine hit. People addicted to porn, all these things that just gives this dopamine hit, and drugs as well.
Yes. Seems like most of human behavior is chasing dopamine,
Well, we live in a world which is trying, like, addictive, like Instagram is trying to get us to scroll and press the like button and check for messages. We have social media apps left, right, and center that are fighting for our attention. It's no wonder that, I was speaking to a client yesterday that has got a 15-year-old daughter, and we were talking about their generation. I would be it'd be stressful to be growing up as a teenager now with all the pressures of society, of what they push on you and everything. And when it comes to social media, definitely.
I think there's one other addiction we haven't mentioned, begins with the letter W. Workaholism. That's another way people get a dopamine hit, but unfortunately it can cover up the burnout.
It's a release. And I think that work, definitely people put it in there. And I've had clients that have turned to alcohol because of relationship issues, but also staying at work late so they don't have to go home to their relationships.
Yes.
And there's always going to be an underlying reason of our relationship with ourselves. Like what are we working for? Are we working to prove other people wrong? Are we working because we want to just prove things to ourselves? But
So 2 other things that might be a sign for people burning out are sugar addiction. That's a very common way to boost dopamine. And what you just mentioned there, avoidance of quiet alone time, where you don't have a phone in your hand.
Well, sugar issues is something which I very much look at with clients when we talk about blood glucose and blood glucose management, is that I get a lot of clients to test blood glucose in the most part, to see that they have these afternoon cravings, but they're not getting enough protein in their diet, which is going to help stabilize their glucose. And every time our glucose dips, we don't have good glucose management. So when it dips, we have a release of cortisol, because one of cortisol, the stress hormone's prime jobs, is to boost glucose. So our brain fuels off of glucose. So we want to have that kick. And if we're not getting good steady management through our diet and through stress management, so things like meditation, yoga nidra, breathing exercises can help stabilize glucose, that we're going to then have lows and then crave sugar. We're going to end up then being on a roller coaster to need more sugar. It's a vicious circle to be on.
But so many entrepreneurs are on one of those little, or many of them, circles, because they push themselves and they use these substances or whatever devices to push themselves. And,
it's just a roller coaster.
And you can do it for a while, maybe years. And I think the other factor in here, naturally speaking, most humans have more health and energy and vitality when they're younger. And typically, I don't think this is necessary, but typically it degrades over time. And so what happens is, in their 20s, they're used to doing all-nighters and taking caffeine and drinking wine and what have you, and nothing bad, quotes bad, really appears to happen. Behind the scenes, their health is degrading. And then they hit a brick wall when they burn out. And so you're here to help people avoid that burnout brick wall.
And if they've hit the brick wall, then come to me quickly, because it takes a while to get back from that, but you can do it.
Now, there was a question I wanted to ask you earlier that I totally spaced out on, which is why is burnout so important now this year?
I think
and by this year, I mean as opposed to 20 years ago,
I think even in the short term, this year compared to 2020 and 2021. So we had a growth year last year in 22 where most things, economy was getting back to where, well, I say economy, businesses were getting busier after COVID. And now people are trying to make up for lost time. They had 2 years of potential slowness. Some people thrived during it, but chances are a lot of people weren't able to travel. Now they're trying to make up for lost time and play catch up all the time. We're trying to do 25 hours in a 24-hour day. And I think
unless you're living on a different planet, that's impossible.
Exactly. And then as we know about, we keep getting told about recession coming and everything like that. So we're trying to deal with that. The cost of living, all these sorts of things. There's a lot of things going on. But I think we've touched on, when we spoke about youngsters nowadays, that social media 20 years ago
didn't exist.
I think MySpace was about it. Maybe that existed, MySpace, MSN Messenger, something like that.
Yes.
But I was at music college then, and I think MySpace was around the thing that was going on. But you could build your business then, no doubt.
Yeah.
And there were some very successful entrepreneurs, but the market is very, very saturated. So we've basically got all these quick fixes coming along, all these stresses. We're exposed to more news outlets as well. And bad news is the thing that sells. Good news doesn't really sell as well. So we're just constantly just bombarded with this 24/7 lifestyle as well, that light exposure. We're told that we need to work later. We're told we need to work earlier. We're on different time zones. Like you're in Peru right now. I'm in the UK. That we've got businesses that I've got clients. One client in Taiwan, one in Australia, and then we go to America, Canada, South America. Like there's different time zones because of technology, which is an amazing thing.
Yes,
we still have to create our boundaries.
Well, most of this technology really is only, electric light was only invented in the 1890s and only became common in the 1920s-ish.
Yep.
I can remember my grandparents, they had gas lights still in places in their house.
Wow.
Which is basically like a candle, but with gas supplying it. And I guess the point I want to make is a lot of this technology only has appeared in the last 100-ish years. And they say it's accelerating on an exponential curve. In other words, the new technology that happened in the 90 years prior and then the last 10 years is probably about the same amount of technological change.
Yeah.
Which sort of implies the amount of change we'll get in the next year is as much as the last 10 years. I might have the numbers off, but the point is it's accelerating. We've now got all that chat GPT, AI stuff coming in.
That's crazy.
People are either embracing or freaking out about, depending on their personality. And the point I want to make is human beings did not evolve to have 24/7 news and social media and always on and artificial light late into the night. Human beings used to go to bed when it got dark, and get up when it got light with the sun, not with, and they didn't have, if you were, this is a story, I don't know if this is true, but I sort of feel if there was a loud noise blaring in your ear, it was probably a wild mountain lion trying to eat you if you were a cave person back in the day. Now it could be your alarm clock trying to wake you up. And what a stress reaction that puts on the body,
I use a Lumilamp alarm clock, which just wakes you up with a light over 30 minutes, and it's amazing.
I used to have one of them. They're great.
They're great. Absolutely great. It's the only time that I've needed the actual alarm was when I had to wake at like 3 a.m. to get to Heathrow. So,
funny thing is, I do, when I have a flight, I will put a backup alarm on, but I just set the intention. I go to bed early the night before, extra early, so I can get in the sleep I want. But I just set in my mind, it's like, okay, wake up at 3 a.m. or whatever the number is. And I usually do. It's quite amazing. We have an internal.
There's a lot when we set intentions. I was talking to someone about sickness, how when a parent has kids and they get sick, or your partner gets sick, that you automatically assume that you're going to get sick because you're sharing a bed, you're sharing the house. But actually, if you set the intention, like the law of attraction, manifestation and stuff, and your immune system is good, then you should be all okay.
You are all okay.
Yeah.
The human spirit and intention of mind, my personal belief is we are all, part of God. We are all creative beings, and we can set intentions and manifest things in our life through, having a clear intention with a strong emotional force behind it. And this comes back to why having excellent health, which is what you help people with, helps you have a more successful business. Because when you have great health, you can set more powerful intentions. You can climb higher mountains.
Exactly.
Yeah, because you can put out that vision into the world and inspire other people to come along with you on the mountain climbing ride.
Yep.
So I think this is probably the most important secret hidden skill you can have in your business to get your health really good. And not good by pumping it full of chemicals like caffeine and this, that, and the other. But
we always say with caffeine that it's borrowing energy from tomorrow to fuel today.
Which, you can do that occasionally.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I have caffeine, but what I find with caffeine is that when people wake up on caffeine, it stops them sleeping properly in the evening.
Yeah, nicotine too is another.
Nicotine is a very, very high amount of stimulants.
Yeah,
and even with things like vapes and stuff like that, the chemicals in there are causing issues. But there's a lot of chemicals that we get exposed to, and our detoxification systems are just overloaded. That
would be the liver and kidneys.
Yeah, and skin. Lymphatic drainage and stuff. Where, especially when we add alcohol into the mix, it's a very big thing that is impacting a lot of people.
I just see you as like one of, those Shakespearean three witches stirring the big pot full of potions. It's like, ooh, let's add some caffeine, let's add some nicotine, let's add some alcohol, let's add 24/7 news. We'll sprinkle it all in.
Yeah.
Bubble, boil and trouble, stress and burnout, come out now.
Something like that. Yeah.
Something like that. Now, we've talked a bit about some hormones here. I think, is dopamine a hormone or it's a neurotransmitter?
A neurotransmitter, yeah.
That means it talks to the brain. And of course, we have that belly brain down in our intestines that also deal with the same neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
So. But what about how do hormones, people, I assume everyone listening has hormones racing around their body. Does that affect this? Yes, literally.
When we look at hormones, and I deal with a lot of women going through the menopause, I deal with a lot of guys that have looked into testosterone replacement for because they've just got low sex drive, they're struggling with weight, and
maybe they're just fucking stressed. If they considered that.
Well, this is the thing that happens.
Just any guys listening or having trouble getting their body part up or getting excited, maybe you're just a bit stressed. And,
Well, not just that. Like when we look at the mechanics of how things work in the body, the hormone issue is an output. It's not the input, usually the reason. Thyroid problems, and we use thyroid for energy creation and metabolism and all these different things. Usually, and one of the frustrations I see is that doctors are prescribing thyroid hormones, medication, specifically for underactive thyroid or overactive thyroid or whatever it is that they're doing. But they haven't actually looked deeper into what is going on. Seeing the stress, seeing previous trauma, all these things that have happened. Now, we have a thing called our hypothalamus, which in our brain, which sends out signals to our pituitary to release a thing called thyroid stimulating hormone to our thyroid gland, which then releases T4 and T3. And we have to go through conversion and stuff like that. We won't get into that part of it, but hormones as well. We have HP, hypothalamus pituitary gonad axis, which going to be sending signals to our testes or ovaries. So hypothalamus pituitary testes to release testosterone. hypothalamus pituitary ovaries to release progesterone and estrogen and so on. Or to release like luteinizing hormone and follicular stimulating hormone to release the certain hormones. One of the big problems we have is that cortisol, first off, impacts this feedback loop to change the actual first signal from the hypothalamus, signaling our pituitary. So first off, we may get the signal to release too much or too little of whatever's going into the hypothalamus or the wrong types. Then we get the signal from our pituitary, which again, we know is impacted a lot by cortisol, which then tells the thyroid to release the wrong amounts or the testes to release the wrong amounts and so on. And not just that, there's also the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal axis, which links with epinephrine and cortisol. Again, has that feedback loop, which should tell us to stop. But when we're too stressed out, that cortisol message gets muddled up, gets mixed up, and we just get mixed signals. So we see people having thyroid problems. We see people having problems with the menopause, where high levels of side effects.
Prior to menopause, a lot of women have
heavy periods
problems.
Not going through period, menstrual cycle, irregular, heavy, as we say, and then we lead to problems with iron and red blood cell issues, all these different things that can happen as a result of too much blood loss, which can then lead to more problems with lethargy, anemia, all these things that can happen. When actually, if we dealt with stress and which is
let me give an analogy that came to me here. If you had a car and it was burning oil and you had all this smoke coming out the back, the Western medicine solution is, well, let's just kind of cover up the smoke. Yeah. But really, you need to look at why is the car burning oil, and maybe you've been putting your foot on the accelerator in the car and burning it, destroying the engine in effect, which is burnout. And you can get away with a car of how some people drive foot on the brake, foot on the gas, and it's kind of very jarring. And eventually it destroys the car. And one day you're going to be on the freeway or the motorway, as you call them in the United Kingdom, and the car actually breaks down, or you have an accident. And I think, I don't think anyone listening, well, not maybe some people listening wouldn't take care of their car, right? But most entrepreneurs are happy to spend thousands of dollars getting their car preventively maintained, right? Why not do the same thing for your body?
Yeah. I think if we look at it like that person who dropped $63,000 a month, how much would she have actually put in to make that not happen? So when we talk about what is the cost of a client acquisition, if you're going to get 20 grand from that client and it costs you 5 or 10 grand to get it, you're up. So you're going to be making profits, right? So, well, depending on what your cost of actually fulfilling that client is, but if you're going to make 20 from a client and it costs you 10 to get that client, you would do it. So your body is making you money all the time.
Right. It's amazing.
And I have a client
we talked about women hormones issues. Men often have similar issues. They just come out in different ways.
And I think one of the things we see with guys is that testosterone replacement isn't as common as hormone replacement. So whilst, again, we should be able to deal with it before we get there, but with women in menopause, their adrenals should be able to create enough progesterone to actually function effectively without the need of HRT. But the stress levels stop that. Same with guys, testosterone does go down after 30. Around 1% a year, testosterone can go down.
Really?
With good lifestyle, on average. Now, that's with good lifestyle. So if we think from 30 to 40, you've got 10% less testosterone with really good lifestyle. We can slow it down a little bit. But
how fast does it go down with bad lifestyle?
Exactly. There was a study done on people that got 6 hours or less sleep for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks. Their testosterone went down on average 10 to 15%. 2 weeks was like aging 10 to 15 years.
Wow.
Now, I don't know what the study was, what brought that back up afterwards, because it didn't continue on with the study, but it's a very well-known study that has shown it was multiple subjects. So it wasn't just 5 people. There was probably about 50 subjects that were shown this, and on average 10 to 15%, 10 to 15 years based on sleeping 6 hours or less. And that's just sleeping 6 hours or less.
is very important for radiant health, and also it helps detox the body of stress and helps the hormones rebalance, helps you clear trauma from the day. I mean, it's a great investment. People think of sleep time as being a waste, quotes, waste. It isn't. You know?
I always describe sleep as if we think of a big airport. So think of Heathrow. Through the day, you've got planes coming and going every minute, 90 seconds, 2 minutes. It's really busy. And that's just like our body. But in the evening, even though the planes have stopped, there's admin, there's refueling, there's restocking, there's maintenance work going on. There's all these different things. There's organization, like admin, all going on that is vital to the smooth running of the airport during the day. Our body does that as well. The detoxification, cellular regeneration, all these things happen. New hair follicles are laid down, all these things, hormone balances through getting good sleep. Now, there's a difference between getting good sleep and being knocked out. What's that? Sorry?
New business ideas sometimes come
exactly
to me
when you wake up. I get some crazy ideas sometimes, but like people will then use alcohol because they say it helps them sleep. There are no studies, as far as I'm aware, and I geek out on studies that show that alcohol is beneficial for restorative levels of sleep. It's beneficial for knocking people out.
It'll knock you out. It'll make you unconscious. It might cut down the amount of worrying you're having, but it doesn't lead to deep sleep. And I think people who drink any significant amount, which I used to do, drink enough alcohol to get a hangover the next day, they know the sleep when you're drunk is crappy, you know?
Yeah. I think deep down people know it. It's a case of where we go into using your intuition and self-love, that you love yourself enough to warrant improvements of your health.
Yeah, I gave up alcohol. It was just, I have a bit of an addictive personality, and I was learning how to do magic at the time, which is setting intentions in a ritualistic way, kind of thing. Is how you might
magic with a K. Magic with a CK.
I never really went into spelling it that way, but yes, magic with a CK as opposed to conjuring trick magic. Yep. But setting an intention and making it manifest. In particular, I wanted to make my business make more money. Now, I went to a quotes conference. It was actually a, Wicca camp or whatever. But I found I couldn't get my magic to work when I'd had one glass of wine. I wasn't even drunk. I just had a glass of wine. And then, so I was slightly buzzed for an hour. And then I had the slight come down for another hour afterwards, which you might call a hangover. And I just had difficulty getting that power to work. And I was like, shit, I'm going to stop doing this because I really, really want to grow my business. And part of that was getting the magic to work. Anyway, I can't remember the name of the book, but I read some book about alcohol that it really does mess around with your sleep and your body chemistry, and there's all these toxins that your liver and other body bits need to clean out. It's
you got to remember as well, alcohol has still got calories in, 7 calories per gram, but the labeling doesn't have to show that. So actually your body isn't able to use them for energy. It has to burn them, but it can't use them physically as energy like it can carbohydrates or proteins and fats and things. Yeah. So like, even though there's conversions there, it has to burn them before those other things. So they're literally, when people say they're dead calories, they are. We still have to get rid of them, and it gets rid of them from trying to detoxify, trying to push them out of the system, and literally feeling rubbish. It also dehydrates you as well. Inhibitions drop when you have alcohol.
Right. Yeah, there's a lot of, if
it's not to say that I'm 100% against alcohol. I don't drink, so I don't like the taste of it. It's what we call in moderation.
It is a poison.
Yeah. There's no.
I had the experience when I first started drinking. I did find the taste. When I was 14 or 15 in the United Kingdom, when they started letting you drink, I did find the taste a bit disgusting, and I only kind of persevered because it was like the thing to do.
Yeah.
And I will say, after some really bad experiences with some Dutch gin, I couldn't touch the stuff ever again. So it is interesting. Anyway, let's not delve into alcohol as a whole. We've delved in a little bit. We stuck our toe into the bath of alcohol. Yeah. It's just one factor here. Now, what about you mentioned weight gain? It might be a sign that someone's going towards burnout or difficulty gaining weight. Either way, they're having difficulty having a healthy weight.
I think that's linked more when it comes to thyroid issues. So if people have got overactive thyroid, they'll end up where they're just not able to keep weight on because they're just totally stressed, literally be eating so much sugar and stressed. Then we want to look into glucose management as well, because I've seen people that just aren't overweight that are diabetic because of poor blood glucose management. And the same with like trying to drop weight. If your body isn't able to, basically, if you've been pushing yourself and you've been stressed out and your detoxification systems are overwhelmed, now you're also exposed to daily toxins in the air, diesel fumes, mold, mycotoxins from mold, from your environment, BPAs, plastics. Then all these things, if you're overweight, they get stored, all the toxins get stored within fat tissue. Now, it's safe there because most fat tissue doesn't have mitochondria, which is basically like the brain cell of the cells.
Really?
And then as a result, the body sees it as safe, that we basically can't have any issues with that. So we're not going to release it. So when we actually try and lose weight and our detoxification systems aren't working, now this isn't to say go on a juice fast or anything like that. I'm not trying to sell any shakes or anything. This is literally, if we can improve our detoxification system, get our liver functioning better, methylation functioning better, like systems around the liver, kidneys and everything, we're going to be able to then mobilize those toxins and get rid of those toxins. So if people have
reading about this, I think it's called niacin flush that flushes out toxins, but what the warning that was given with it is you need to be careful because you've got a lot of toxins stored in your body and you start flushing them out, whether it's through using a protocol or going to the sauna or whatever. You need to,
Well, a lot of times women more than guys have historically a harder time to go through what we call stage 2 detoxification, actually getting rid of toxins. So we tried to mobilize, go from fat soluble to water soluble, can do that. But basically like a toxin from one arm is like it's being taken over to the other arm and just stored there. And now it's released again and can do more damage. We're not actually able to sweat it out, like take a leak and piss it out. When it comes to tears, crying it out, breathing it out, like all these things, like we just relocate it, like what we call that chelation. It just basically like translocates to another part of the body. And that's very, very detrimental. So when I see people going on these detox diets, they want to do this really long fast, or they go on a detox diet, they end up doing themselves more damage. There's more harm than good. Rather than building the foundations, supporting their health, their liver, looking at their kidney function, maybe doing like a complete blood count to see what's going on in their body and getting a practitioner like myself to read through that and just advise accordingly. But the quick fix that's marketed is definitely, especially this time of year, have this 14-day detox, have this juice diet. And people want these quick fixes, but end up having to do them. The quick fix is the longest route.
Yeah.
So many
I think there's several levels to detoxing. There's the things you talk about, but also it's reducing the amount of toxins going in, which means removing. I know a mutual friend of ours, Dana, he kind of went on this. He was getting rid of plastics in his, no more plastic bottles of water and what have you. And I must admit, I've done a fair amount of that for quite a long time, looking at the ingredients in body care, what's the shampoo got in it? Ooh, these chemicals don't look too healthy.
That people look at sometimes what they're putting in their body, but forget the skin is an organ as well. So deodorant,
biggest organ, it's bigger than the lungs, isn't it?
Exactly, right? We look at surface area, but like there's a brand I use called Green People, which no affiliation to them, but it's just all natural stuff. It's a little bit more expensive, but I look at health further down the line that it's actually cheaper.
Yes.
You don't have to deal with it further down the line, but and chemicals again can affect your sleep and everything like that. Can affect hormones, can affect fertility.
That can be beauty care products, shampoo, food, water, the air we breathe. It can also be the clothing we wear, or
clothing.
the
stuff think we drink out of, all this stuff. Like even so down to like living in Norfolk, it's a farming county. And there's a lot of pesticides and things there. So you actually ride in the countryside. I love cycling in the summer. Ride in the countryside, there's the air quality.
Yes.
Diesel
I
fumes.
had an uncle. He died recently, or a few years back. But he had an exposure to chemicals in his job when he was in his 30s, and then he was super sensitive. And they moved from London to Cornwall in the countryside, but the farm was spraying with pesticide all over his crops, and he'd like break out from that.
Exactly.
So I think paying attention to the environment, if you're able to spend some time outside, away. I mean, in England, that would mean the Lake District or Scotland or Wales or some other bit.
I mean, don't get me wrong. Like, I think going in the countryside, not all the fields are going to be there. So if you're spending loads of time in London, in the centre, and then you go to Norfolk, it's an improvement. If you're living in Norfolk, then going to the Lake District is going to be an improvement. Once you take like 5 hours to get out of Norfolk, that is.
Or go to the ocean. You've got the North Sea next to you.
Exactly.
In Norfolk, so, I mean, although the seas are somewhat polluted, the air quality over the sea is probably pretty good.
And then you look at like grounding yourself and everything and getting in nature.
Grounding. I love grounding.
Yeah.
I've got one of those, what do you call it? Sheets with little silver things through it. And it plugs down.
I've got one of them for my meditation to go on. I keep like toying with getting the actual bed sheets and stuff, but I haven't clicked buy yet. So I need to click buy and just grab the bed sheets and pillowcases.
They're not that expensive.
Nah, they're not.
Yeah, and I have a mat under my computer as well.
Yeah.
Some people they're into walking barefoot, on grass or sand or whatever.
In the summertime, I do that rather than the sheet. I go outside, I have my rooibos tea, and I meditate just on the grass, making sure the dog's mess is cleared up first. I don't want to get that into human nature.
Probably better not to do that. And that does help with sleep. I find I sleep deeper. The deepest I sleep is when I get away from all the electronics. I'm in the countryside somewhere and it's quiet. I go to bed when the sun goes down and there's no like noise of the city going on.
Well, the best night's sleep I had last year, I done an event in Medellin and then we went to the rainforest and we whitewater rafted. Like you couldn't get trucks there or anything. We got a truck to the top of the mountain, trekked down, whitewater rafted to a campsite, and we're literally camping in the middle of nowhere.
Mm-hmm.
That was the deepest night's sleep I've ever had. I got like 97 sleep score on my Oura ring. And I only slept like 6-7 hours, which was crazy.
Yeah, but it's a higher quality sleep. I mean, I've got a goal to take a break from business once a quarter for a week and totally disconnect. And last year, some vacations, I didn't totally disconnect. I was kind of checking messages a bit, but I took off during Thanksgiving week, which, because my clients are in America, Thanksgiving's a big thing for them and they're not around. And I was near the ocean and the way I was falling asleep listening to the waves. Oh my God, I was sleeping 11, 12 hours for the first few days. I think I needed to like catch up. And I mean, I know you can't catch up on sleep, but
no, but like if your body needs sleep, then getting some extra isn't going to be detrimental, really, unless you're getting it near when you want to have it again, right?
Yeah. So do the best to, if you can't live in the rainforest 24/7, which maybe is difficult, at least
I'd say so.
Make your bedroom quiet. Don't have your phone near the bed.
Take your phone out, as much blackout blinds. But there's a company called Manta Sleep, and they do sleep. In fact, one of the guys is a DCer, a mastermind that we're part of, and I have their Manta Pro mask, and he actually gave me the first mask, like the original one, in 2018, and I used it pretty much every night, which has these kind of pads around the eyes, and then they Velcro on, so it's not touching your eyes, because I hated that about sleep masks.
Speaking from the female perspective, it fucks up with your eye makeup if you're taking a nap as well.
I bet.
Not the Manta mask does not mess with your eye makeup. If you're taking what's called a disco nap or something before you go out. Yeah, you put all the clothing.
You don't want the panda eyes going on afterwards.
Exactly. So
I got the Pro one last year, which is for side sleepers as well. So it's got like a little bit of a divot at the side, and I love that. It's absolutely awesome. So I highly recommend getting a good sleep mask, and that's the one that I use. And things like breathing as well. I have a nose strip that I use just to open your airways a bit on your nose. I've done things like mouth taping, but I've done mouth taping in the past. So you always breathe through your nose. That historically that we should breathe through our nose. Most people are mouth breathers. And
really?
Yeah.
Why is that?
I think just how we've evolved. And then we look at allergies and people having a lot of food that don't agree with them. We bung up our nose. Now, because I've taped my mouth to go to sleep, which is weird at first. So I'd recommend doing it like sitting down for a while and then build up to it. I don't need to do that. My mouth just stays closed. And like, I just have this tape on my nose, which is really, really powerful.
Wow. That opens up the nostrils, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that relates to the brain, because when we breathe through the nose, and the speed of breathing and the depth of breathing affects all those neurotransmitters. And
exactly.
So,
and oxygen at the end of the day. Like, if we're getting good oxygen, then we're going to have better brain function. We have better brain function. We're going to have, that's the signaler for cellular health.
Well, there's a whole oxygen. I mean, there's hyperbaric chamber, or however you pronounce the word, where you go in a chamber with high pressure and you get extra oxygen. And I did that. I felt great afterwards. And it's and there's all the ozone treatments and other things you can play around. There's lots of things.
I've not used a hyperbaric oxygen chamber, although someone invited me onto their podcast. There's none in Norwich, but there's going to be some in London.
Everything.
Someone invited me onto their podcast who's got one in her business. So I'm like, well, maybe we'll just record the podcast in person. She's in London. I'll get the train down there and we'll do that. Yeah. Sorted.
I mean, it's pretty harmless. You're raising air pressure 30% or whatever the amount is. And, it's very slow. It builds up slowly. You stay in there. The biggest fear I had was claustrophobia, but they have a quick release mechanism in case you freak out. And so lots of cool things we can do to improve our health and hence improve our business. If people are interested in chatting to you more, how can they find you online? What are the best ways to?
My main website, my website is ojayhealth.com. And all the information.
But you better spell OJ because it has a funny spelling.
Yeah, OJAY Health.
Exactly. See, if you were thinking of OJ Simpson, you'd have misspelled that.
No, but it is my initials, Oliver Jordan.
I get it.
So ojhealth.com, and there's information on there I've got things like a health screening. I've got my one-to-one work, but I also have a group program called the Revitalization Blueprint, which is lessons every couple of weeks, live Q&As, and just over 2 years worth of a library of videos that have all split into sections and really, really helpful for people. But that's you can get directly to that, revitalizationblueprint.com. And that's revitalization with a Z. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure. Ollie. Thank you for having me. It's been awesome.
You're doing great work with helping people improve their health on a fundamental level, not with a quick fix, but really helping them heal that, and then help them, that helps them change their business so much. So
definitely. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Get detailed show notes on today's episode together with your free What Would It Take Business Intuition Guide at intuitiveleadershipmastery.com. Create a fabulous and profitable day. What would it take?